Welcome to Full Stack PHP Web Development course. Tables. The look of an HTML table can be greatly improved with CSS. Table borders. To specify a table border in CSS, use the border property. The example below specify a solid border for table, table header, and table data elements. For example, here we have a table and we group the CSS table elements, table name, table header, and table data, and applied a border property, shorten property to this table. This will apply a border around the table and inside each cell of table data element. Full width table. The table above might seem small in some cases. If you need a table that should span the entire screen full width, add width 100% to the table element. Something like this. Double borders. Notice that the table in the example above have double borders. This is because both the table and the table header and table ITD elements have separate borders. To remove double borders, take a look at the example below. The border collapse property sets whether the table borders should be collapsed into a single border. So we will add border collapse. If you want a border around the table, only specify the border property for the table element. So I will remove table header and table data elements. CSS forms. The look of an HTML form can be greatly improved with CSS. Styling the input fields. Use the width property to determine the width of the input field. Here in this example, we have an input element which is applied 100% width. This width will be applied to all the input types elements. Padded inputs. Use the padding property to add the space inside the text field. For example, I am applying padding 15 pixels. This will apply a padding inside the element of input type. Bordered inputs. We can use the border property to change the border size and color. Use the border radius property to add the border radius to add rounded corners. Colored inputs. Use the background color property to add a background color to the input and the color property to change the color of the text color. Focused inputs. By default, some browser will add a blue outline around the input when it gets focus clicked on. You can remove this behavior by adding outline none to the input. Use the focus selector to do something with the input field when it gets focused. You can see the difference. The first input, while it is focused, is applied the background color light blue. And the second example, with the type text and a focus, it is applied a border color. Input with the icon images. If you want an icon inside the input, use the background image property and position it with the background position property. Also notice that we add a large left padding to reserve the space of the icon. Here we have in this example input and attribute of type which has the text value. So this input CSS only applied to the input element with the type of text attributes. It has been applied 100% width, box sizing, border and border radius, font size, background color and background image, which should be image that is already available in that directory. Animated search input. In this example, we use the CSS transition property to animate the width of the search input when it gets focused. You will learn more about the transition property later in your CSS transition chapter. When I focus, it will automatically increase the width to 100%. Styling text areas. Use the resize property to prevent text areas from being resized. Disable the grabber in the bottom right corner. Here is this example. Beside the other CSS properties, we use the resize and its value none. This will not enable add user to resize the text area. If I comment it and run, you will see a little grabber to the bottom right side of text area, which can be used to resize the text area. Styling select values. Similarly, select element can be styled. Width, padding, border and border radius and background color. We just use the name of element and all the select element will be applied this CSS. Styling input buttons. Here in this example, we use the input of type button, type is submit and type reset. Because all three buttons have their own purposes and being used in the form element. All these three type of button all applied the same CSS with background color, non-border, color white, padding 16, 32, padding, text decoration none, margin and a cursor point which will wait up cursor pointer when we hover over the button. And lastly we have responsive form. Resize the browser window to see the effect while a screen is less than 600 pixels. Make the two columns stack on top of each other instead of next to each other. Box sizing CSS to all elements. Then input of type text select and text area is applied with padding, border radius and resize vertical. Lastly we use resize none for the text area. Now we have a label. Label is only applied padding and display inline block which shows element in inline. instead of a big blocked element. We have applied a separate CSS to input tab submit, and also we applied a hover selector. Background color is changed when we hover over the submit button. We have a container div element, and here we have a columns 25 class, which is applied float and width of 25%. And lastly, we have a responsive layout when the screen is less than 600 pixel wide. It makes the two columns stack on the top of each other instead of next to each other. We have first name and input first your name in one line. What will happen when I resize to less than 600 pixels? You note the width here. So after it is less than 600, you noted that it has moved the your name input type to new line. This is called a responsive form and is achieved using the CSS.